My name is Eric Hayward, and this is my Communications 3325 speech on how to give a better presentation. I'm sure that everyone has been to a presentation in the past where they were wondering just what in the world the presenter was trying to pass on and why the presenter was actually trying to present their information in the way that they did. Well, everyone can improve their presentations by just following a few simple steps. The basic steps are aiming the speech at the audience that you're presenting it to, having something important that the audience is actually interested in listening to, and making contact with the audience itself. The first portion of it is aiming the speech at your audience. Well, to begin with, different audiences are going to require different presentation methods. In the 2007 article, How Not to Open Your Speech, published in Directors and Boards magazine, they state that opening with a joke or even a question can often backfire on you. The basic reason for this is that you always need to be aiming the speech at your audience. So opening with a joke to a professional group of people probably will not go over too well unless they have a good sense of humor. Also, some people may be offended by the joke that you select. So if you are going to open with a joke, then you need to make sure that it fits with the audience that you are presenting to. So you definitely would not want to be using a crude or a technical joke with a younger audience, is just one example. Also, you need to adjust the length of your speech for different audiences. This is according to the 1970s article, Tips to Giving a Speech in Management Review. The reason that you need to adjust the length of the speech that you're giving is just different audiences would have different interest levels and willingness to both comprehend and listen to your speech. So, for example, if you were giving a brief speech to your boss on how to improve some portion of the business, you probably will want to keep that speech down to about 10 minutes. On the other hand, if you're giving a technical speech to some of your colleagues on a specific topic of which they know a fair amount on, and you're expanding upon their knowledge, that speech could easily be 30 minutes or longer. On the other hand, you might have a very short speech, a little 5-minute speech or such, if you had a younger audience that you were presenting to, like let's say elementary school children, just giving a brief overview of a particular topic. So in theory, you could actually have 3 or 4 different styles of audiences for exactly the same speech given in 3 or 4 different formats and different lengths for these different audiences. You would not want to give the same speech to the technical gurus as you would be trying to give to the young children. The young children would just not understand at all what you were trying to get across to the technical audience. So the second thing we want to cover is having something important to say. In the 2008 article, 11 Public Speaking Pointers, published in Entrepreneur magazine, pretty much everyone that wants to see a presentation wants to actually have a presentation that they are interested in. So for example, if you were making a presentation on medicine and presenting it to a CAD and CAM conference, it probably would not go over very well, just because the topic of the audience is so different than what the topic of your speech is. Also, in the 2011 article titled Use Short Words in Managing People at Work magazine, they point out that you want to use words as concise and simple as possible. So you don't want to use technical or complicated words or long words, where a nice short simple word would suffice. So one example would be using the word acceptable instead of superlative. A lot of people may not know what superlative means, particularly if you're aiming the speech at a younger audience, but they would understand the word acceptable. So the third thing that we want to cover briefly is just making contact with your audience. In a 2011 article in an American Speaker magazine titled Developing Natural Gestures, they point out that you both want to make eye contact with the audience members as well as move around some, just because it's not normal to be totally still. So first, making eye contact. Everyone in an audience prefers to not feel like they're just some fixture on the floor. Well, you may be making your presentation to 50 or 100 people, in which case it's pretty much impossible to make eye contact with everyone. At the same time, you do not want to just be standing still and looking at your notes or at the ground all the time, but instead making eye contact with at least 2 or 3 people in the audience so that you are interacting with them. At the same time, you want to move around some. You might point up at your PowerPoint presentation as you're making specific points, but at the same time, you don't want to be making wild gestures constantly throughout the entire presentation, because the wild gestures can actually become quite distracting to some of the audience members, and they may get turned off by your speech. At the same time, you don't want to be totally rock still and not move at all, like a Buckingham Palace guard, because they want to see some interaction and not just a stone statue. If they wanted to see somebody give a presentation without any movement at all or any interaction at all, then they could just get an audiobook on the subject and listen to that in the car as they're driving along. So let's review briefly the 3 basic topics that we covered. We've got aiming the speech at your audience, having something important to say, and actually making connection with the audience itself. If we follow these 3 basic steps, and you know the basic content of your presentation, then you should be able to make a fairly effective speech. And when everything is said and done, the people in the audience ultimately want to have a positive representation of you as a presenter, and think of you as a positive presenter and not as a negative one. The reason for this is basically, if you've got a negative representation, they may not want you to come back again and give a presentation in the future, or they may just remember you as the bad presenter. So I hope that these 3 basic tips can help you in making better presentations in the future. Thank you very much.